8,
You're watching The
7,
Experience, Comic Culture, and
6,
Sales.
5,
Streaming live daily to
4,
Facebook, YouTube,
3,
Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
So when you're a writer, sometimes headlines are the best thing for prompting stories for you. And the worst thing to do is actually to read the article. Now, you kind of want to read the article because you don't want to do the same story. But what I do is I read the headline. And then if it clicks something, I let it run. And then once I have a story idea, then I'll read the article. And today's article is on CNN. And it says simply, plane turns back to JFK after horse escapes on board. Now I know that if I click on the article, it's probably going to tell me something like it was a big cargo plane and it was flying overseas and the horse just got out of its ropes or its cage area and, they just had to land and secure it again. But my mind went Snakes on the Plane, with Samuel L. Jackson running around trying to catch the horse and the rows of people all full, and the horse just heading back and forth. And to me, that would be fun. So that all came into my head as soon as I saw that headline. And again, I'm sure it has nothing to do with the actual story. But think about it. How cool would it look to have a horse running down the aisle on an airplane and through that little curtain into first class? And like snatching a bottle of Grey Poupon out of somebody's hand. Yeah, I'm old enough that Grey Poupon is still a joke to me. So stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We have got a full lineup today. We've got comics collectibles. We've got Talk and Treat trivia. There's the 360s comics. And, of course, Kicking It with Henri. I am trying to build up the old BDE. That, of course, is Big Dan Energy. Because we're going to have a guest today. But we're going to talk a bit about all the crazy things going on in the news before our guest gets here. So as soon as they get here, JD will give me the heads up and we'll go into a great interview. But until then, there's a bunch of stuff going on. There's a trailer released for Madam Web. There's a trailer released for What If Season 2. So yesterday when I said the rumor was that What If Season 2 was going to start on December 22nd, they were going to drop an episode a day through December 30th, that there was 9 episodes. All true. I gave you guys the episode names, but there is so much more to them. The one about Peter Quill taking on the Avengers, this isn't a Guardians of the Galaxy versus Avengers. This is young Peter Quill, who had been delivered to Ego, coming back to Earth with his powers and taking on the 1988 Avengers, which include Hank Pym, Dr. Lawson, who's basically the first Captain Marvel, Bill Foster as Giant Man, T'Chaka as Black Panther, and I'm forgetting somebody. But yeah, that's your lineup of early Avengers. And also, Peggy Carter's in it, and Howard Stark, but how they were like in that flashback scene in the first Ant-Man movie. So that's about where it takes place. So a lot of people are talking about that. A lot of people are talking about the Madam Web story because they have they kind of have a fake Spider-Man. They have Ezekiel Sims, and he's running around in basically a Spider-Man costume. And this is a little Terminator-ish. It's feels a little Final Destination. I saw one person look at the trailer, goes, it could be good, but it feels like a CW show. And now I can't unsee that. Now that when I watch the trailer, I think, new to the CW, Madam Web. So that's going to be difficult. Yesterday, DC announced the writer for Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, but today they announced casting of one of the villains for Superman Legacy, and that is going to be Maria Gabriela. Excuse me, there's more to that name. Maria Gabriela de Ferreira, and she is going to be playing the engineer, who is part of the Authority, who's one of the backbone characters of the Authority. So, they are being classified as the villains, which makes a lot of sense because, there's a lot of characters. They've already cast some of the Justice Society or with Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern, Anthony Corrigan as Metamorpho, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how they play into the Authority. Are they helping Superman take them on? Or is this the group that gets their butt kicked by the Authority before Superman gets involved? Yeah, kind of interesting there. Another big piece of news. Now, we talked yesterday about how, and we've talked recently about the rumor that Marvel was going to step away from Kang with the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars and go in the direction of another villain, maybe Doctor Doom. And yesterday, somebody talked about Jeff Loveness being let go from Kang Dynasty, and people were running with it that was a sign that they are definitely moving away from Kang. Well, today's news is that Destin Daniel Cretton, the director of Shang-Chi and the executive producer and director for Wonder Man, and also supposed to be Kang Dynasty, has chosen to step away from Kang Dynasty to focus on his other Marvel projects. He's still good with Marvel. He's still doing Wonder Man. Wonder Man is still happening. It's going to be a Marvel Spotlight feature so that it is kind of a standalone. You don't have to watch other things to watch that. I mean, you kind of do because supposedly Ben Kingsley's character is going to be it. So you should have some background on Trevor Slattery. But other than that, you should be able to watch it without it. So he's directing the first 2 episodes. He's the executive producer. That show is supposed to get back into production early next month. So he's focusing on that, and he's supposed to be focusing on Shang-Chi too, which I know a lot of people are very excited for. The first movie did very well, and I got to tell you, if it's a choice between him working on Shang-Chi 2 or working on Kang Dynasty, I would like to see him do Shang-Chi 2. And I think he's decided the same thing. So he's moving over to that. So they're going to need to get a new director to go along with the new writer for Kang Dynasty. And of course, everybody is running around going, see, that's proof they're moving away from Kang. Sky is falling, So take that as you will. There's another rumor going around right now. And this is kind of interesting because one person put it out there Everybody's running with it. And now it's being backtracked a little bit. The initial rumor was that Pedro Pascal had been offered the role of Reed Richards in the Fantastic Four, and he was close to signing it. I love Pedro Pascal. I think he's amazing. He's got great energy. I'd almost want to see his energy somewhere else, though. Reed Richards is more of a cerebral character, and I like Pedro to be able to go a little larger, a little bigger. But if they cast him as that, cool, great actor. That is already starting to be retracted a little bit. They're still saying that he was offered a role in Fantastic Four, and that he is close to signing, but they're saying now that it might have been a miscommunication with the insider, and that he may actually be playing the villain of the Fantastic Four movie. Now, we don't know who the villain's going to be. Yeah, JD says he'd like to see Pedro as Doom, or that could be Kyle. Pedro would make a very interesting Doom. I think he would. Would he want to wear another set of armor? That's a good question. Does he like the idea that he can have somebody else in the suit most of the time, and then he could just do the lines? Maybe. Or maybe he does it like Robert Downey Jr. He's on set and they just CGI the suit. That's interesting. I don't know. And would Doom have that heads-up display that Tony Stark has? I think they would do something to make sure you knew that it was who it was. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going to go with that. But again, we don't know if Doom's going to be the first villain. I hope not. We've had 2 Fantastic Four movies. Doom has been tied into their origin twice, and I've thought it was a mistake twice. I would much rather see them go with a smaller character, less complicated one that you don't have to really spend a lot of time in explaining, and then focus on the FF, and then bring in Doom or some of the bigger villains later on. But I mean, they could do there's plenty of villains for the Fantastic Four, and Pedro could do any of them. If you told me he was being cast as the Mole Man, I'd be like, all right, I can see it. Yeah. Though Danny DeVito would be a fun Mole Man too. So, I still have my preference on what they could do with the Fantastic Four, but with the multiverse saga, they could do just about anything, because they could technically do the Fantastic Four in its own little world, not make it part of the MCU, and then at the end of phase 6, bring them in, so you don't have to answer that question of, well, where have they been all this time? Because they weren't part of this universe. Like they're going to do with the X-Men. That would make a lot of sense. And they could even have it tied to that X-Men universe. So, and I think if they're going to do Secret Wars, I think Doom will be involved. So Doom is probably going to get introduced. But like I said, I'd like to see them go with a smaller character, because I think Doom is kind of his own movie. Doom is his own story. To really create that villain properly. And that's the big knock against Marvel, is their villains are pretty much one note. They, Dar-Ben in the Marvels and or even Jan Rog in the first Captain Marvel. Neither one of those were good villains. You know, you got good actors to play them, but they weren't good villains. For every Wen Wu, you get like 3 of these no-name villains. So I'd really love to see them develop Doctor Doom properly, making him a real threat. You know, I like what they're doing with Kang and developing him. I'd like to see them do something like that, where they put a lot of effort into Doom to make him an A-tier villain or an S-tier villain. You know, because it took time for Thanos to really become a big threat. Or you need a movie like Ragnarok, where Hela is kind of the big villain. You know, you're not introducing a bunch of characters. You know most everybody in it. Minor characters, you know, Grandmaster, Valkyrie. But, you know, you're not introducing Thor and Loki. You already know those characters. So, you know, but usually the solution to that is something like Captain America and the Red Skull, where their origins are tied together. But that, I think that we've shown that if you do that with Doctor Doom, you fail. They've done it twice. They've struck out twice. I would assume that is just not happening, you know? It's not going to work. So, all right. We're going to take a break. We'll check on our guest, and when we come back, we will either have a guest or I'll be winging it. So, be right back.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey. And behind every page, there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and we are driving towards 2,500 subscribers or followers here on YouTube. If you have not followed us, please do so and tell your friends. If we get to 2,500, we've got a bunch of big things planned. I know we've got it broken down finally, but I forgot to grab that before I got the show started. But we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff. So get your friends here, get more followers, and we're going to have a lot of fun this holiday. So, all right, we are going to bring in our guest. She is an actress, a singer, a writer, a film producer, and a comic editor. She's best known for starring in the 2009 horror remake Halloween 2, as well as the supernatural thriller Compound Fracture, which, besides starring in, she co-wrote and produced. She was the editor-in-chief of Top Cow Productions, and with her husband, Taylor Maine, they are now doing a new graphic novel called The Last Spartan Red Tape. Please welcome Renae Geerling.
Hi, Dan.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So now you're back there in Georgia, right?
We are. We're in Atlanta. Yeah, we moved to Atlanta I moved to Atlanta in 2018. Tyler, we bought the house in 2015, and Tyler was coming and going between LA and Atlanta. And I was like, have fun with that. I don't know what you're going to do with that house. And then I came out and I saw Atlanta, and I was like, wow, this place is pretty great.
I was thinking we have our first rain here in California this year, and I'm like, you probably get plenty of rain out there.
Oh, we do. We definitely do. Yeah, it can get a little, but we have a nice fall here. So I really do like that a lot. Now, you're in California. You just had the 10 fires, which I was watching. That was very dramatic.
Yeah.
Has that messed up the traffic for you at all, or are you staying?
I luckily get to work at home.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But it's only about 15 miles from me, and it does back up the freeways because I'm off the 60, and that's one of the major alternate routes to the 10.
Yep.
But it's going to be shut down for 3 to 5 days just to repair all the columns and stuff. And I think somebody should have thought, hey, let's not put the chemical stuff underneath the overpass.
Hindsight, Dan. Hindsight.
Yes, hindsight. So, all right. So you are doing the Last Spartan.
Yeah, we are in our last, what is it now? 30 some hours, I think. I've lost the count, but we're in the hours left on the Kickstarter. And
you're not that far from the next stretch goal either.
We are not.
So,
I think we are about $2,500 from the next stretch goal. So I'm excited. I'm crossing my fingers that we make it.
Yeah, let's see if we can push you over that line.
Would be cool.
Now, Last Spartan is actually a book series.
It was a series of novels by John F. Saunders. Mm-hmm. The first one that he wrote ended up, so his son, John, tragically lost his life this year. It just a horrible illness, unexplainable, suddenly came on. And so that's another thing about this book. John was the one who said to his dad, if anyone should play Frank Kane, it's Tyler Maine. And so 15 years ago, he had sent Tyler a copy of the book, ended up on his desk. And I read it and I said, this is a great character. I love this character for you. And we worked with John. We've been friends with John. He actually came on and helped produce our 2 feature films. And so we've been working with him. So making this book, was a friend project. It's been a long time coming. And because John Jr. started the whole thing and tragically, just horribly suddenly passed this year, we definitely have all said we feel like, he's definitely watching this process as we come to our finish line.
Now, I'm curious about the character of Frank Kane.
Yeah.
Tyler being 6'7".
Mm-hmm.
Is Frank described as that large in the books?
Frank is described in the books as being, I believe, and now I've been working on this graphic novel for so long, I think he was 6'5", 6'6". He's definitely tall.
Okay.
And so his stature was definitely one of the reasons why they were like, Tyler Maine would be perfect for this role.
Yeah, because I know on something like the Reacher stuff,
yep.
The big problem is that Lee Childs created the character to be 6'9".
Yep.
And it's like, how do you find a 6'9" guy that can act?
Yep.
and they get Tom Cruise. So, but no, I think I agree with you. I think Tyler is the perfect casting, and from everything I've seen of the character,
yeah, and originally when it came in, he's a very laconic, enigmatic character. Really, really brilliant guy, ex-motorcycle enforcer, a lot of things that Tyler had interest in. And in the original novel, it was more like a Taken. It's one man goes on a mission after one girl against a small group of antagonists. And when he comes back into town, finds a lot of his old enemies are still there and remember who he is. When we brought the material to Christopher and said, we want to make this into a graphic novel, one of the things that's difficult about translating a novel into both film and TV and comic books is that in a novel, you're afforded the ability to take the reader right into the character's head. So they don't have to say anything to anyone in the book, but you're getting everything that they're thinking. The difficulty with a character like that in a comic is that the only way to really do that is to do the whole comic with just a narration, right? So like captions. And so, and Priest had actually done a great job with that, I thought, in his Black Panther series, where you there also have a laconic character who is mysterious and doesn't talk much, and so has to be shown through actions and also through the reactions of the cast around him. And so we really played into that for the graphic novel, and working with Christopher was just really fun. He's
for those who haven't pieced it together, Christopher Priest adapted the novel along with yourself and Tyler's input and to come up with the story. And then who's the interior artist on this?
So what we did is there are actually 3 separate chapters. It is a full, we've been getting this question a lot. Is this like one part of the story and then we're going to have a cliffhanger and need to wait for more? This is a standalone story. It's left open at the end for many more adventures, but this is one standalone graphic novel. What we did is there's actually the myth, which is the chapter 1, which is drawn by Will Conrad. Chapter 2 is the case file, which is actually the mission that they go on to rescue the girls. And that is drawn by Jimbo Salgado. And then the third is the debrief, which is when the truth really comes out about what really happened. And one of our taglines is trust no one, because everyone has things they're hiding. You're not getting the full truth. You don't know exactly whose side they're on throughout. And so at the end, we have a lot of surprises for the audience in the end of the book as to what actually happened.
Now, I heard Tyler describe it.
Oh, and that's drawn by Michael Montanot. Okay.
I heard Tyler describe the book as Sons of Anarchy meets Punisher with human trafficking.
Yep.
Now, and you guys are playing big into the human trafficking and the cause and trying to help the cause. Yeah. So how does that work? How does the graphic novel help the actual epidemic of human trafficking going on?
Yeah. So the human trafficking, obviously the first story, the novel, is a story about human trafficking. It's a smaller story about one girl being trafficked. When we started developing this with Christopher, it all kind of, we moved to Atlanta. Atlanta is a huge hub for human trafficking. And you're kind of inundated with this idea every time you walk through the Atlanta airport. And it's also been a growing, as we've been creating this book, it's really been in the zeitgeist of the world, right? And then you have The Sound of Freedom that came out, and you're just hearing more and more about it. So that was a complete coincidence. For us, when we started researching this book, and one of the goals was to build the entire world from just Frank, one girl, and a group of guys trafficking her. We wanted to bring it into a bigger arena, a bigger theater. And so we actually have more governmental agencies involved. We have a much larger cartel that's running this, that's a worldwide cartel. We have more people involved on all sides. And as we were researching this to learn more about how human trafficking works domestically, it's really disturbing, Dan. I mean, it's insidious. It's everywhere. It's both big and, it's coming through the borders, which is, I think, what a lot of people assume it is. But 80% of victims trafficked in the United States are trafficked by Americans, and most of them are trafficked by friends and family or acquaintances. And how much of it happens just at a local online level, right? You're seeing a lot of this with social media and how dangerous it is for kids that they're constantly being groomed and baited. Just the headlines that we were finding as we were doing this, we would have writing meetings with Christopher and we would say, well, what about this as the plot? And Christopher would kind of chuckle and say, that would never happen. And I would say, hold please, and send him several articles detailing how this had happened multiple times. And he was, we were all horrified. I mean, we were completely edified and educated to how big of a problem this is. And just how dangerous it is right now for kids, for teens, for women, for just, everywhere. So that really got Tyler passionate, and that kind of, one begat the other. So we started our research, and then he started learning about these organizations like Deliver Fund, Trafficking in America Task Force. Obviously there's Our Rescue that was working with Son of Freedom. Like there's so many groups who are working to stop this. And so he got involved in the fight to, raise money and to promote these organizations. And so I don't know if you knew this, but he did a bunch of in-costume photo ops this year. And the money for those actually went to human trafficking organizations like Deliver Fund and Human Trafficking in America Task Force. So the goal is, with the book, with the chapters, and between the chapters, we're going to be highlighting some of the work that's being done. It's a fine line, I think, between being a little too preachy, but we definitely want to show that this is not, people might read this book and think, oh, this is so far out there, it would never happen. It happens every day. And I know that because we've researched it. So part of what we're doing is part of the Kickstarter. There's the Coffee and a Comics perk, which is the Deliver Fund coffee. So all of the money from that coffee is going to Deliver Fund. Kickstarter has a lot of rules. You are not allowed to do donations and charity work through Kickstarter. So that was a way to bring one of our partners in a way that was a legal way to do it. And Tyler's continuing to work with these groups and find ways to help raise awareness and raise money, and that will continue long after this book is done.
So tell me about the background of Frank, because we know he's a biker.
Yeah.
That he was out, but
Frank is ex-military. Frank was in the military, and as many soldiers that I know do, that the regimen, the brotherhood, the hierarchy, the rules, the structure of the military kind of becomes a part of your DNA. And when you get out of the military, readjusting to civilian life can be difficult. And so some of these ex-military join these motorcycle clubs, which has the same kind of brotherhood and hierarchy. And Frank joins one that's a meritocracy. We get into it a little bit in this book, but there's a lot more stories to be told about the Last Spartans. And there's a whole story there of his life as an enforcer and moving up in this bike club. The bike club is betrayed by one of their own and falls. And Frank is the lone survivor, ends up going to prison, doing time for weapons, and does 5 years and gets out and is living a life of boring obscurity, living in the suburbs. He works in a motorcycle repair shop. He's fixing bikes when he gets the call that it's time to repay an old debt, and their granddaughter has gone missing and he needs to go find her. And so he has this full web of contacts that he's able to go back into and dig back into in Atlanta to make that happen.
I like that. I like the simplicity of the motivation. There's
Along
a
the way,
lot.
though, this is the fun thing about Frank, because Frank has subscribed to the Spartan way of life. He still believes in omens. And so part of what leads him through his quest, if you will, is that he still sees and gets omens and believes that he's getting messages that are sending him on his route. And along the way, he meets Amanda Harper, who is an undercover agent. She acts as a human trafficking decoy. She looks very young. And she has gotten frustrated with some of the bureaucracy. And so this is an off the books mission that she kind of taps Frank to go along with, at odds, because she wants to save them all and he only cares about one. So there's a lot of friction there. But together they go up against this international cartel.
That was going to be my next question, was to tell me about Amanda and her backstory.
I'm anticipating you.
So, yeah. Is there anything we need to know about Amanda besides looks young and works?
I think she's very frustrated, right? She came in with a lot of high ideals. And because she is diminutive and she is a woman, she is a little overlooked. And she has so much more to offer. And the truth is, she is probably the only person who can stand up against Frank in this whole thing. Everybody else falls in front of Frank except for Amanda, who can definitely hold her own against him and is right many times, much more than he would like to admit.
Now, Mark Silvestri is involved in this too.
Yeah.
What's his role in this?
Mark did the cover for the graphic novel, and that was, Mark was my first boss in comics. I started working at Top Cow in 1997. Started answering their phones. I was their receptionist, and then I moved up to associate editor, managing editor, editor-in-chief. Through 10 years of being there, I worked with Mark for 10 years. And, Top Cow back in the day was a studio where we all worked together. Nothing was really done online. If you were remote, you were doing it through FedEx. Everything was physical, and it was a completely different world. And so in a studio environment, because there are no FTPs, because there is no Dropbox or WeTransfer, when you're putting a book together, you're actually making a physical film that you mail to the printer every week for whatever projects are going out. And so we lived in the studio. Pencilers, inkers, colorists, letters, Mark's office, the president, David Wohl was there. And we had everybody. We had Dave Finch, Joe Benitez, Victor Lamas, Michael Turner, D-Tron was there, Matt Banning, Brandon Peterson, Brian Ching, Clarence Lansing, Kucha, Francis Manipul started working there. Mike Choi came in and started working there, David Nakayama. So Tyler Kirkham was in-house for a little while. So we just, there was so much talent there, and it really was a family.
Yeah.
My mom used to call me Wendy. She said I was Wendy with a bunch of Peter Pan and my Lost Boys. And it was my job to wrangle. So Mark and I go way back. And when I called him and asked him if he would do a cover, I really did think it was a long shot. I mean, he's Mark Silvestri, but he said yes. And I knew he was at that time, he was working on Batman and the Joker Deadly duo. And I knew this was a huge project. And everyone that I talked to who was seeing pages come in was just like, your mind is going to be blown by the work that he's doing. And it truly was. The work that he did on that book was staggering, just so impressive. And he wrote it and he drew it and he inked it, and his attention to detail. It was so I still, through the whole process, kind of thought it might not happen. Legitimately, because he's just so busy. He's in demand and he's Mark Silvestri. But he said he would do it, and he told me he would be sending it to me, and he sent me the pencil. Sort of ironically, I was having an emergency. I was at the emergency vet with my dog, who was in like horrible shape. And he sent me the pencil, and I got a little verklempt. And I just thought it was so beautiful. I really, Dan, I just thought he was going to maybe do a sketch and I would be able to get it inked and colored by Steve Furco, who came back in. Steve used to be Mark's colorist back in the day when we worked at Top Cow, and now he's been doing all this amazing digital work. He's art directing Lord of the Rings video games, and I mean, he's kind of moved on to different stuff, but he's been coming back and doing some coloring again. So he came in and did that, and just they blew me away.
That is awesome. Yeah, I got to see some of the pages that when Mark was working on the Batman stuff, Matt showed me a few of them. I'm like, that's going to blow some minds. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a huge monitor, and I bought it digitally and I blew it up. And one of the things that I think people who read comics, love the physical medium of holding a book in my hand and flipping pages. But one of the things I learned early on, and when I used to sit and watch Steve Furco, paint on the backlighting, and Peter Steigerwald do these paintings, and J.D. Smith and Richard Isanov, and that I just used to sit and stare and watch their work and think that it was sad back in the day that no one would ever get to see this backlit the way that I did, because when it gets printed, it's a bit muted. And the beauty of the backlit of this backlighting of this coloring is just, it's so gorgeous. So to be able to open Batman Deadly Duo and blow it up and just really hone in close up on those details on those panels.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah, that is definitely a book they need to do, one of those hardcover reprint oversized.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Yeah. So, I mean, they did that with Hush, and it is absolutely gorgeous. So I want to see that for that one too.
Yeah.
Now, you guys have big hopes for this project, in that besides just being a graphic novel, you want this to go, on into other media and stuff like that.
I think anybody who spends this much time delving into characters and who they are and why they are and what they want, I think any creator is always going to want them to, go and do more. I want to see more of their stories. I want to see what happens to them. I would love to see this in other mediums. I would love to see more books of this done as a comic book. I want to see what happens next. So yes, I definitely would love to see that.
See, this seems like it's just tailor-made for like Amazon Prime, Netflix, for anybody. I mean, Prime is getting their Jack Reacher and Jack Ryan. This would be their, another streaming service could have their version of it, basically.
Yep.
And so I've got fingers crossed for that for you.
Thanks. I would love to see it. Tyler and I talk about this a lot. We both love the Blacklist. Mm-hmm. And there are some parallels to how we could see this playing out sort of along the lines of Blacklist, but we'll see.
Yeah. I know the writer in me is thinking, well, yeah, this is the story they're telling, but he's got enemies out there, and he's got like a John Wick list to go through, and
Yep. People do not forget.
No, that is very true. So, this project aside,
mm-hmm.
What have you been working on? What do you got up?
Well, since we moved so I've been doing some work for a company called Rogue Matter, which is a fledgling comic book company that's done most of their stuff online, but I think they're having a big coming out party. It's not maybe exactly the phrase I want, but they're doing the LA Con this year, and they're doing that in a big way. So Rogue Matter is heading there. And I've also been working with Darby Pop Publishing, which is owned by Jeff Klein, who is an animation producer, best known. He was won an Emmy for his Transformers Prime series, and he worked on Rescue Robots. He's been doing animation for decades. He worked on Men in Black and the Jackie Chan adventures and so many. We did the Bruce Lee graphic novel with Shannon Lee, and I know we've been talking about the potential of doing more, and that would be amazing. I mean, I think Bruce is a fascinating, amazing character that we cannot let be forgotten, his philosophies and everything that he did. And he's just fascinating. So, you know, that's another thing that I have out there that I would love to do some more work on with Shannon. And Shannon is just great. She's just good people. So I've been working on that. And then when we moved to Atlanta, when I originally moved to Los Angeles, Dan, I moved there with a theater degree to be an actor and got my job in comics through different temping positions that I was taking. And I got an opportunity to answer phones for a company that did something with art, they said. And that was Top Cow. And that's history. But when we moved to Atlanta, I've been doing some more acting work. So I've actually had some co-stars on The Wonder Years. I was on Saints and Sinners, Judgment Day. I've done, I was just on Will Trent. So yeah, so doing some commercials and stuff. And that's been really fun for me. So definitely branched out here and doing a lot of that.
Yeah, Atlanta's really becoming the hub for a lot of film work out there now.
You know, it's a lovely community. There's a lot of space, which I think when you live in a place like Los Angeles, you forget how nice it is just to have some room to move and think. People are really nice here. And the cost of living is a little bit lower. So the level of stress is just lower. And while I miss so much my old stomping grounds, I miss my old friends, I miss being able to go for lunch, I do not, however, miss the 2-hour drive across town. The commute everywhere just got awful in the last few years that I was there. I was there for 21 years and it changed a lot.
Yeah, I'm a native, and I've lived probably about 20 miles outside of LA my entire life, and it's never been a 20-minute drive into LA. It's always been 2 hours, hour, just.
See, now when I met Tyler, I lived in Hollywood. I lived right at Santa Monica and Melrose really, and Gower was where I was living when I met Tyler. And Tyler lived in Santa Clarita. It took me 40 minutes to get there. It was taking over 2 hours to go the same distance by the time I left. So my experience of it was that it really did change a lot.
Yeah, I'm about, like I said, about 20 miles outside of LA, east of LA. For anybody that knows, I live near Frank & Sons.
Okay.
Yeah. And I used to play D&D with Matt at the Top Cow offices on the weekends. So
which offices?
The current ones. Well, at least we were playing about 4 or 5 years ago. So don't remember what city that is. Not that far from Randy's Donuts.
Okay.
Yeah, and that still would take me 45 minutes to an hour just on the weekends to get in there.
Yeah. Yep.
Excuse me, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold.
Me too. I just 2 days ago, just a little bit of a something.
Yeah. It's the weather, as we get colder, it's going to be that way.
For me, I think sometimes when the heater comes on that first time, I get a little dried out or whatever.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit you with the heavy question to end this with.
Oh, all right.
A lot of talk right now because of an article that came out about the comic industry dying. Now, you've got 25, 30 years experience. So do I. I know.
I remember the first time somebody said that and I was like, clutched my pearls and I was like, surely that cannot be true.
Yeah, it is. It's 2023. We kind of have to accept that it's a little bit past the 90s. How do you look at the industry? You got a graphic novel coming out. You still work with a few different publishers.
Listen,
I think still viable.
Absolutely. I think people have been, the end is nigh for so long and so many times. I mean, I remember back when Marvel was almost bankrupt, right? And Image had come in and they had kind of my take on it is that image sort of raised the bar on what people were expecting for bells and whistles on detail on artwork. It wasn't as sustainable of a model as Marvel and DC had been. They were a little more simple. They were more, let's get the stories out. And Image came in with the artists now running things, and they were all about perfecting and making it, everything's the Sistine Chapel, and it was beautiful and flashy, but you can't do that on a 5-6 week deadline all the time. And I think the model is going to keep changing, Dan. The model for everything is going to keep changing as the way we consume it changes. As we had Comixology, and then it became Amazon, and we had Kindle, but now there's not a Kindle. But people, and then during COVID, it was all Kickstarter and crowdfunders, and let's support the artist directly. And we have things like Patreon. Like, when people say, is it going to die? No, it's not going to die. People are always going to love these serial mediums. We've gone from novellas to comics to like blog. Like, there's always going to be something. And even with AI, when people get scared of AI, right? Every time something new comes on, that anxiety to me is what that means is we just have to figure it out. We just have to put our time into discussing putting our dollars behind what we as a society want to see and how we want this to now work. I'm really encouraged by the fact that they've made it not copyrightable for AI. I think artists, much like pencilers and inkers back in the day when digital inking started coming in, right? And it was doom and gloom because now inking is dying. It's not ever going to die because there are always going to be people who love the traditional style. The fact of the matter is digital inking is more expedient. Digital inking for some pencilers, they love it because now they're not handing their pencil line work to somebody else who might cover it over in a way that maybe they don't agree with. Now they can take it and they can digitally ink it and have control. In my experience, sometimes an inker who comes in can sort of fix line work that may be kind of an Escher drawing, if you will, right? If you have a light source from this side and you're drawing really thick lines over here, that's, now you're giving shadow on a side that's supposed to be highlighted, and an inker, a second eye, can sometimes come in and see that and adjust it so it's more clear for the colorist. So, it all just really depends, but it's not the end of it. It's just a new phase. We're just going to try something new. And I don't think that we will ever do away with hard copies of comic books. People love books in the same way as Kindle came along. And yes, we have audiobooks, we have Kindles, but there will always be that tactile feel, the smell of books. People who love books just want to sit with a book and enjoy a book. And the people coming along, new generations, there are still going to be people who love sitting with books, even if it's just because it's so cool and retro, right? Like albums came back, records come back, things go through cycles. I remember when Stan Lee was trying to do his first version of Comixology, where they were trying to do the page turn on the computer, and they had this great idea and technology wasn't quite ready for it yet, but we got there. And it didn't kill comic books. I just don't think it's going to kill them. I think there's too much love for what it is, and I think it will always be there. And we just have to figure out how we are going to support it. Those of us who love it have to put our dollars where our heart is.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, I'm the type that I'll sit there and listen to an audiobook, and if I really like a book, I'll go buy the hard copy.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Because I want to put my little notes and my little flags, and absolutely.
Yeah. All right. We're going to wrap it up there. Thank you for joining us. And for everybody listening, please go check out The Last Spartan Red Tape. It's on Kickstarter now. It's in the last 30 hours.
Yep.
We're trying to push them to their $50,000 goal, which will open up a Soya Yaom.
Sia Ohm. Sia Ohm she did a beautiful variant cover for us. Yes. So the next one it's a bookmark, the Sia Ohm bookmark, and a digital wallpaper by Ron Leary. It's gorgeous. You should really check it out. It's in the updates. You can see what it looks like. Everybody's already getting the first stretch goal, which is the digital wallpaper of the Mark Silvestri cover for their computer screen. The Ron Leary one is also quite something, and the Sia Ohm cover is beautiful.
So if you, the link is in the chat, so check that out, and keep an eye out for other stuff that Renae has working, including stuff from Darby Pop and Rogue Matter. So thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.
And everybody else, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Do you remember what it was like when you were a little kid and you got a letter in the mail? Now imagine that letter was filled with information about your favorite shows, pop culture questions, links to things you're going to want to see later, and even sneak peeks at upcoming programming here on The Experience. That's what the EXP mailing list is. Every week, we send you sneak peeks, information, and all of the relevant links for all of the shows you want to see. Sign up now on our website or scan the QR code that's on your screen right now.